Welcome to the Squared Circle Pit with your host, Rob Hasbani.
Now entering the Squared Circle Pit, you may have heard, you've absolutely heard his voice if you listen to Ozzy's Boneyard or SiriusXM Liquid Metal. He is the infamous Shawn the Butcher.
Hey, yo, Rob, what's going on, dude?
So great to finally have you on Squared Circle Pit. I have been talking to Shawn about pro wrestling forever.
I've been a fan of pro wrestling forever, since 83, since the year I was born. And now we're about to, it's about to be what, the 40th anniversary of WrestleMania, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the thing about all of us born in 83, even though WrestleMania was in 85, the first WrestleMania, our ages are in sync with WrestleMania. So that's a very fun, easy way to remember which one is coming up.
It's on just how old am I gonna be? From when my cousin recorded it. I have my cousin's VHS tape, and I still have a VCR to play it in. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
I would say the WrestleMania that I watch the most, is either 3 or 4. Because I love that.
I do 7. That's Macho Man retirement match, I think. Right, that one is,
yep.
And then
and Hogan Slaughter.
And 6 Hogan Warrior.
Hogan Warrior.
Yeah, that's just all. And then so I remember my uncle had some tapes, and then my buddy, I used to live in a court in Queens, and he had a bunch of VHS tapes, and he had, I think, the one before that, Mega Powers Explode, which was 5. So yeah, I was able to sometimes I didn't see a couple years, and then other times I had stuff on tape, and then other times my parents are like, we're not paying for this pay-per-view. And then it just became a thing in the household where every year my mom would I was spoiled. So I'd be like, please. And yeah, I'd get SummerSlam. It was 4 of them. So it was back in the day when there was 4 of them: SummerSlam, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, and Survivor Series. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I did not have cable, so I would just have to wait the 2 months to get it on the rental.
That's how I sold my parents on the illegal cable box, because in Queens in the early 90s, the mid 90s, the illegal cable box was the way to go. And I was like, you don't gotta pay for any more of these wrestling pay-per-views. And she was like, okay, let's get it. I was like, yeah.
I've talked many a times on the show about the wonders of the illegal hot box. Same, I got cable in my building. My whole building got wired for cable in 96. And 1 week later, my parents got hot boxes for their room, for my room, and it was every pay-per-view thereafter. It was a wonderful time to be a wrestling fan in New York.
Yeah, I remember going for swimming lessons at the YMCA, and I hated doing anything as a kid, so I'd always be the one with a tummy ache. I don't want to. I have a tummy ache. I don't want to go. I have a tummy ache. And I had to learn how to swim, and I was doing my tummy ache bit, and my mom was like, if you don't learn how to swim, no WrestleMania. And I was like, now I half-assed know how to swim, kind of, yeah.
I think she was a good mom for that, because I think swimming is
look at you every morning out there on Coney Island.
Yeah, I mean it's life changing. It's very free.
The ocean, we worked in the same business. We still do, just doing similar things, and the stress and the agony and the gray hairs and the mental health abuse disguised as mental health awareness. It'll tear you apart. And the only thing that centers me and brings me to realign my chakras and get my head together is being by the ocean, near the ocean, in the ocean.
There you go.
When we move, my girlfriend's like, what do you need? I'm like, a deli. I need to be near a music venue, and I need to be near a beach, within 15 to 20 minutes of everything. That's the only 3 things I need. That's what I need in my life: a bacon, egg, and cheese, a beach, and a music venue.
Yeah, and it is crazy. New York City, it's such a big city, but also it's a beach town. I think that's like one of the coolest things about New York versus many other cities. Not many like that, of course. LA, sure, but Chicago. There's no beaches in Chicago.
I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine not being near water.
river.
I need just the sound. I mean, I sleep with a white noise machine, and like I need that flow. It kind of like relaxes me.
So let's take it back. Do you remember your earliest wrestling memory? Do you remember like the first way you
I
got
mean, my
exposed to
cousin
wrestling?
Scott. So my mom's twin sister, my Aunt Debbie, used to live right down the block, and my cousin Scott was older, so he was like the coolest to me, and he was into everything. And wrestling. Those were the first toys I got, was the LJN, the big rubber, like donk your friend on the head with them things. But he had there was like 3 Hulk Hogans, but all the faces were ripped off with like crayon and marker on it. Like and multiple Iron Sheiks and the Sergeant Slaughter and the Andre the Giant with the afro and all those, and those WrestleMania VHS tapes. I was all about it. And then, as a kid, toys, I loved toys. And then I got the little Hasbros. I think it was the Hasbros. And I just had every one of them. And all my friends had them. And I just had piles and piles of these toys. But yeah, I was always watching the pay-per-views. Anytime I'd go to like Blockbuster or like the video stores before Blockbuster, I Sound 40. I would rent like Survivor Series and all the tapes that I didn't have, and I always loved wrestling as a kid. And like then I would go as an adult, like phases in and out. I'd fall out for a couple of years and then go back in and go to WrestleMania at the Garden and go to WrestleMania or Survivor Series at the Garden, WrestleMania at MetLife Stadium or whatever. Like we just did Metallica in MetLife, and I was like, I know I've been to football stadiums and it's never been for football and it's never been for a concert. I'm like, why am I ever here? And I'm like, oh, WrestleMania, the other big ticket in town. Yeah, but my whole life I loved wrestling. I feel like every growing up little boy just was a big wrestling fan. It was just always on TV. My grandma's house, watching it on like the Flick channel TV. She'd be there making cookies, and it was like whatever was on at noon, like Superstars or whatever, when it was like guys just jobbing to the big guys. And just my whole life wrestling was with me. It was just always there.
You mentioned the action figures. I also had a wide array I had the LJN and then definitely the Hasbros, and I had a big collection of Hasbros. I was still traumatized that my mom eventually threw those out when I was like 12 or like whatever age I was that she decided you're done playing with these. But did you have like I would have intricate feuds and like a whole fantasy promotion that I create for myself with championships and pay-per-views. And I drew logos for pay-per-views. Like I remember one of them was called the Spectacular Series.
Did you do commentator voice while you were wrestling? I mean, you had to,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Did you have
I'm
a
the general
specific
manager.
commentator voice? Because I know mine was always Vince McMahon's, because he was always the most dramatic when he was on the commentary. So that's kind of how I would do my commentary when I was playing with my toys.
Yeah, I would say like a Vince or a Gene Okerlund would be kind of mine.
Yeah, me
like
and
a very
Gene.
straight-laced. Yeah, for
I
sure.
would do everything. I'd take all my toys. I'd have my X-Men, Wolverine versus Hulk Hogan. That match happened so many times you don't even know. I would make characters. So there was a Bishop from Aliens toy that came out, and there was a Batman whatever toy that came out. I had all the Batman toys, and then there was a Robin Hood toy. So I took Bishop and I put the Batman thing on him, and I put the Robin Hood vest on him, and I made up my own character, and his name was Galax because he had every power in the galaxy, and he was completely undefeated. No matter who he fought, he never, ever, 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 ever lost. And then one of my friends' genius idea, or he probably picked it up on like watching Lamb Chop or whatever shows, you get the flashlight and you get colored tint, and like you had a red and a green, and I do like the entrances, and I turn all the lights off in my room and flash the lights around, and then I got a camcorder and began filming my wrestling matches. I was a young Steven Spielberg.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, with my wrestling things, and my dad was just like, Learn a trade.
Well, you showed him.
Yeah.
Here, I'm in broadcasting, Dad.
Shout
How
out to
about
Dad.
that?
He just came over and did all my electric. We spent like 30 hours doing electrical work. Crazy.
Well, when did you get I feel like wrestling kind of is what helped get me into broadcasting too, because I feel it is, it's presented as sport. So there's a lot of broadcasting elements to it, a lot of which you don't really see much elsewhere in television. I feel the only other place where I really feel it anymore is like watching baseball games, because they're so slow paced and there's the announcers and they have their personalities, but everything else has been like kind of washed to that old style of broadcasting. When were you like, I want to get into some radio stuff?
I stumbled into it stupidly. I mean, I did love radio my whole life since 6th grade. Everyone was like, you got a voice for radio. And I was like, yeah, cool, great. And then I remember in 7th grade for Mr. Gershon in social studies, I did a thing on Panama, and I had Van Halen's Panama playing in the background or whatever. And then I came on and I did like a news report on Panama. And I remember that being like one of the first times I did something radio like. And then I remember recording, I'd make record my cassette tapes off the radio, and then I would record little breaks in between songs and then put another song. And then sometimes I would record commercials, Raceway Park, all that shit. And I would record the commercials and then put them into the thing and like, so make it a legit. And I remember doing this, but I don't remember ever being like, I'm going to be a radio guy. It was just something that was fun that I was doing with my friend, because my friend was doing it and I was like copying off him. We had the little Sony recorders. I bought a Sony recorder from The Wiz in like the 5th grade for like $80. Yeah, R.I.P. The Wiz, dude. I bought every CD I owned from there. The CDs were like $10. Yeah, and like everywhere from like they were $15, and The Wiz for whatever reason had every album for like $9, and I was like, that's my spot. But I've always been, it all kind of fell together because I was just doing random internships. I wanted to do audio. I wanted to mix audio for bands, but sitting in a studio all day is just not for me, which is ironic that I'm a radio but I'm not in a studio all day. I mean, I'm in my office all day. But there is definite every time a DJ cuts a break, it's like every time a wrestler does a promo, like that's your chance to like push the band or push yourself or push the main event or push whatever's coming up. WrestleMania, and it's like in a couple hours we got our countdown, whatever. Like just it has that similarity. But again, I tell everybody, you don't want to sound like a wrestler when you're on the radio. You want to sound like natural and conversational and not do wrestling voice. But I always play Ric Flair's theme in my background, or Mr. Perfect or Macho Man, because it like makes you feel like when Bobby Roode was popping off with Glorious, like when Glorious was like the #1 song on Billboard, like it gives you that feeling like nothing is more powerful than you're just like, I'm here and I got Razor Ramon's theme in the background and no one can fuck with me. But yeah, I kind of stumbled into radio. I was working interning for Opie and Anthony. I worked for them for a couple years. Then I linked up with Jose, and Jose eventually put me on air, which was like, he's like, just don't worry about it. Just don't think about it. Just go and do it. And that's been kind of the thing for the last 16 years is like, don't overthink it. Kind of just go out and do it. And I failed at pretty much every other job. That's the thing. And I've ever had: bagel store, stock boy, Stop and Shop, seafood, electronic warehouses, toy store, all that, like 3 years max. And I'd be out. I quit or they fire me. Most of the time they fire me. Knock on wood. I've been at Sirius for plus 16 years now. And like, for once, I never saw progression at any job ever. I was in seafood. I stayed in seafood for years. I was doing bagels. I did bagels for years. There'd never be progression. At Sirius, I mean, every day there was progression, or you meet somebody crazy, or like something crazy happens, or an awesome idea pops off, or like we've done so much weird shit that like I would have never thought to ever do. So like and just to see progress and to see people like, yo, you promoting, this band I like is awesome. And it's like, oh, I like this band. I'm kind of just promoting the band. And you never, ever think anyone's listening. I'm sure you've done a million of these podcasts and you're like, you even see the numbers and the stats and you're like, is anybody listening? But it doesn't even matter because it's like what you're into. And to just talk about it and talk shit. I mean, yeah, I'll talk wrestling with you all goddamn day, and I'll talk metal with you all. I'll talk about Sanguisugabog, Skin Cushion, one of my favorite songs ever, Till the Cows Come Home. Yeah, and great hanging out with you at Amityville Music Hall a couple.
Yeah, I went out to Long Island. I schlepped all the way out there to see Sanguisugabog and Dead Body and
Cruelty from Japan.
Cruelty. Oh my God, Cruelty was so good. I like they were the highlight of the night. And it was fun to see the Long Island scene. Oh, go ahead.
I posted all the videos from that show, and for the Cruelty one only, I think it's the only video ever where you hear the crowd like celebrating as the band is playing, and like everyone's doing the Ric Flair woo and like laughing, and like I've never heard that or experienced that before. But yeah, like you said, the Long Island scene, it's crazy out here, and it comes and it goes. Because when I first moved out here, it was wild, and then either I fell out of it or it lightened up a bit. But I feel like now it is insane. Every time I bring my boss Jose a band, he's like, is this a Long Island band? And I'm like, yes. So there's a lot going on out here, and a lot of people are like, well, what the hell? If I don't live in Long Island, I can't get a shot. It's like, no, you can. But it helps if you're out here. I mean, Long Island and Brooklyn, that's where everything is going on. But yeah, it's great to have you out there. That's my favorite venue. I'm glad you were able to finally witness it.
It was really nice. It's cozy, and I like it. And so that was what I was going to ask as well. Is when did you discover rock? Was it the same cousin that showed you rock and metal bands? And I feel like, or was it like, were you into? With me, it was like wrestling got me into rock. Kind of like I was drawn to the heavier themes and the like more. And then like I got MTV, like I said, when I got cable. And then of all, I liked all of it. I just loved MTV. But then Marilyn Manson comes on, or whatever hard rock stuff, and I'm like, or Nine Inch Nails, and I'm like, oh.
It's funny because I never thought of it that way until I'm sitting here thinking. I mean, the first vinyls I ever had was the Hulk Hogan with the hard hat construction.
Oh yeah, the wrestling album.
With the wrestling album, and there was another one with all of them with like Jesse the Body Ventura. They're all in like
Pile Driver. Yeah.
So I had those, and I was blasting wrestling themes forever. And now that I come to think of it, my favorite wrestler was Ultimate Warrior, and his theme was hard as hell and heavy as hell, and that I guess was my first. Probably because I wasn't listening to anything close to that when I was that young. But what got me into like rock, I mean, I came up in the 90s. So it was Nirvana, it was Offspring, and then Green Day. Green Day put me over hard. I was like, oh man, Dookie, this is the greatest album of all time. I thought I was a punk rock kid, and I was like, I mean, sorry, punk rock fans, but I'm not a huge punk rock guy. And I was like, it branched off. It went from Green Day. It could have went whatever, no effects to Bad Religion and the punk rock route, but instead Metallica intercepted, and then it went completely off the deep end with Metallica, Pantera, Sepultura, Machine Head, Fear Factory, like all that 90s stuff. But I graduated 5th grade, and my mom got me a boombox and 2 CDs of my choosing. And I chose Nirvana Nevermind because Smells Like Teen Spirit was the biggest song in the world. And then my buddy David, shout out to David Yao. I haven't seen David Yao in maybe 30 years.
Big ups, David Yao.
David Yao. We hung out in his brother's room. His brother had cassette tapes and Magic the Gathering cards all over the room, and we would listen to Tupac, and we would listen to Wu-Tang, and we would listen to hip-hop. My first love ever was hip-hop. That's how I was exposed to music. Before it was rock, it was hip-hop. Till this day, I still love rock and hip-hop. But I mean, we would listen to Wu-Tang, so I was like, I want Nirvana Nevermind and Wu-Tang Clan 36 Chambers, and those were my first 2 albums, and that kind of like defined me for the rest of my natural life. But yeah, it's always been heavy metal, hip hop, punk rock, sort of grunge rock, whatever the hell you want to call it. I mean, I don't lean too far. I'm pretty laser. Like I don't like to stray too far. And that's why I guess I'm more closed-minded, but I love a million bands. So I don't think I'm that closed-minded, but yeah, I guess Ultimate Warrior could have been my first, like, this is pretty cool, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't even think of it that way.
Even the Hulk Hogan theme, if you think about it, it's like very classic rock. You know, it would fit right in on Boneyard.
Yes. And you watching rock and wrestling, I had rock and wrestling bed sheets, and sometimes they'll pop up on Twitter, and I'm like, oh, I love that nostalgia 90s shit on Twitter. The only good thing about that friggin' app is like this dude Dinosaur Dracula. You follow Dinosaur Dracula?
I don't, but it sounds like I have to.
Everything he posts, he's like, here's the Technodrome from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm like, oh, I had that. And he's like, oh, here's the wrestling ice cream bars, and I'm like, oh, like he just posts all this shit that like hits me in the chest. But
so you kind of hinted at it earlier, but it wasn't just like wrestling action figures you were into. You were also into comics and cartoons and stuff. It was just all the children's marketing got to you. Like they hit you hard with that stuff, right?
Yeah, like I think every time I think of The Simpsons with the Chocobot hour, and they're like bringing those delicious those chocolate bars and those entertaining toys, and then they place them on the screen. I'm like, I fell for all of it. But I mean, what are you going to tell me that the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoons weren't the greatest of all time? And they're back now.
So YouTube has started like hitting me with the nostalgia stuff, and there are people that just find, I guess, their old VHS tapes, and they'll upload like a 4-hour entire Saturday morning cartoon block from CBS or from Fox or whatever with commercials. And I was watching them, and it's honestly so fucked up how the marketing is targeted to children. Like, tell your parents you need to get this toy. Tell them they're pieces of shit if they don't buy you this. Like, I'm making a joke, but that's essentially what the commercial is saying. Like you need this. Your friends will call you a loser if you don't buy this toy.
And I had it all. I was like, Mom, I have to have the ooze in the can, and it makes the fart noise when you think. And there's somebody posted yesterday the Yak Bag. Remember the Yak Bag? They're like, this recorded audio and played audio, and it was the biggest thing in the world. And dude, and I had everything. Tamagotchis, when Tamagotchis were popping off, the stupidest thing ever. I would have to have everything. I was spoiled rotten as a kid.
That's nice though.
I'm the firstborn, so yeah. Yeah.
So I know you have a younger brother. Was he into pro wrestling as well, or not as much?
I mean, he was, probably because I was, and like it was just always in the house, and we had NWO, WCW, Revenge, and we were playing that on N64. It was in his life, but I don't think he'd be rocking like a Macho Man shirt or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't gone to any shows with him, and we should. I think we'd have a good time. Yeah. He's far too busy. But no, I don't think he's ever been like hardcore into it. I've never got a text from him like watching SummerSlam, Rhea Ripley rules, or like anything like that. But yeah, no, it didn't.
I want to know what was your first big wrestling show, and what was your first big rock or metal show?
I mean, first big wrestling show, it goes far back, because I remember my buddy Frank, his dad, I guess, had this hookup at Nassau Coliseum, and I remember being like front of the aisle corner seat, like in Nassau Coliseum for like Psycho Sid. I wrote Sid on my knuckles, and he fist bumped me. That it goes back like to that. I couldn't remember. Yeah, and with and they'd sell the toys. They'd bring you the toys, and you could buy like merch out on the floor. And it was the ones like the Razor Ramon and the Goldust, where you bend the arm and it cracks like the bones are breaking or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And I was it goes.
So this was a house show. It wasn't like
it was house shows. It wasn't any big pay-per-view. My first big one, I mean, it had to be the Garden or whatever. I remember the biggest moment at the Garden was Zack Ryder at the Garden. Then The Rock comes out, and everyone's like, "We want want ride, or it was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen. But I've been to WrestleMania in Miami. I've been to WrestleMania in Jersey. I know they're doing one in Philly. I was just having the chat about maybe we should do this in Philly. I can't remember the first one or the first big one because I would just get wasted. We did MetLife Stadium a couple years ago. I almost died because we were up in like the 1,000 sections, and I was just like, I almost fell and like
you had vertigo.
Oh my god, dude. But yeah, and then big metal show. I mean, my first show was E-Town Concrete in Queens, New York in '99 on my birthday. But that was not big. That was a small, like the venue we went to. Big. I mean, right after a couple of shows after that was Slipknot at Hammerstein, right when they dropped their debut album. So that was
nice.
My
that's
first
a good one.
Big ones with
and that's in the city.
Hatebreed. Yeah, and I rocked my friggin' my jumpsuit. It was hot as hell in there. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't going to shows prior because my mom was like hardcore about like, you're not going to these concerts, you're not doing this. But like, it was like once I turned, I think it was 19, so 16, whatever. I was like, I'm going to the show. It wasn't in the city, it was in Queens, so I was able to go. But my buddy would always go to the city. I missed Pantera 97. I missed Metallica when I think they were doing the Load tour, but that was when they were setting the guy on fire or whatever or something. I just remember everybody talking. It might have
been like the S&M tour, maybe.
Yeah, I missed all these crazy shows, but once 99 hit and I went to my first show, then it was I went to my first show was it was the Voodoo Lounge in Queens, New York, and then the second one I went to WWF The World in Times Square,
of course,
and it was Hatebreed, Nothing Face, and Mudvayne. And I was like, hell yeah. I've seen a couple of good shows at the World. I saw Candiria play at the World, which was weird. But yeah, I love all that shit.
Yeah, that's great. My first big concert was Korn and Stained, which was really cool.
Where was that at?
I was actually, I think it was at Nassau Coliseum, funny enough.
Very cool.
And Korn was like my favorite band in high school. Like the first modern band that I got into, like I liked Nirvana, but by that point they had like I didn't get into them until they had already happened, but like Limp Bizkit was like the first, and Korn were the first bands that I got into as it was happening. Got the Life, I saw it, I was like, oh, this is so cool. These guys are like totally my vibe. I want a pair of Jinkos right now. So that was great. And then when like they would have crossover with wrestling, it was so fun in that period because wrestling was trying to get that audience of like us.
I have again on VHS tape, whatever it is, their summer thing with Fear Factory performing at.
Oh my god. At
and
like
I
the
was
spring
like,
break or whatever.
This is the coolest fucking thing ever. And everyone, like I always see retweets like the lamest era of the early 2000s. And I'm like, you're out of your goddamn mind.
Wrong.
This is the coolest shit ever.
Yeah, this was so cool. You turn on MTV to watch WCW and Fear Factory.
Yeah, I have that somewhere on VHS. It's in the pit. Yeah.
So, yeah, being Long Island, very much WWE, WWF country. When did you get into WCW? Was it just like with Nitro and the NWO and all that?
There were, and there were 3 moments in wrestling for me ever. There was, and they all involve Hulk Hogan. So Ultimate Warrior was my favorite, but like, Hulk Hogan was always wrestling to me. Everyone's like, Stone Cold is the face of wrestling. It's like, I think Hogan was the face of wrestling. It was Hogan slamming Andre the Giant. And the point where I started really getting into WCW, Hogan turning heel. I watched that live and did not expect it and totally popped when it happened. And then follow up is Hogan Rock at WrestleMania 18, possibly
18, yes,
one of the coolest matches ever. When
absolutely one of my all-time favorite matches.
The crowd turns on them and they still make it, and they make it work, and they make it work huge. Hogan is he's the guy. It's always been, and I remember when he turned, and I was like, there's no way, and everyone's throwing shit in the ring. That was so epic.
Classic.
And that was it. That was when I dropped WWF pretty much and was all in WCW for a long time. I think I missed a bunch of the Attitude Era because I was all
Oh, wow. You were so loyal.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I think I'm almost positive. And then
you wouldn't do the channel flipping because Raw and Nitro, of course, at the same time.
I don't remember. I don't remember because I do remember Raw with the do with the actual alarm going off. I was watching those early days, but yeah, there was a large portion of time where I wasn't doing it. But then I think I went back eventually, and I saw a lot of the Stone Cold and the Rock stuff, but I did miss a big portion of it. And I think after that, that's kind of when I wrapped up for a little bit until it was all CM Punk and Cena and Rock and all that. So,
by the way, do you know who played guitar on that Raw theme?
No.
Let me tell you, Scott Ian and Kenny Hickey.
Oh, cool.
And it's so funny.
Typo negative, yeah.
Because I interviewed Scott Ian on my other show, the Livecast, a while ago. And I asked him, I was like, oh, what was it like doing the theme for Monday Night Raw all those years ago? And he goes, I did the theme for Monday Night Raw? I was like, awesome. Well, you're credited here. He's like, I have no memory of this.
Wow. That's pretty wild. Imagine that.
Yeah. And it was also the bassist of Crumbsuckers, the drummer of Overkill at the time, and John Olivia from Sabotage. So
very
cool. Little super group they did for that song.
That's badass. Yeah. I was WWF all up until the NWO, man. New World Order was everything. And then Sting coming in as the Crow. And I was like, oh my God. And now all I've been watching is like how that all went bad. And they're like, oh, it was supposed to be this. And then he showed up and we're like, nah, it ain't going to have it. It's not working for me, brother.
Yeah.
and Dark Side of the Ring, all I've been doing is watching Dark Side of the Ring, even though it's the most depressing show ever. Poor Junkyard Dog, man. Poor Bam Bam Bigelow, man. Like,
oh my God.
Oh, it's heartbreaking. And now they're doing like a Von Erichs movie. I'm like, I can't deal with all that depression. Yeah.
There's a lot. There's also now going to be a documentary on Netflix called Wrestlers. It's following the OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling, and Al Snow is the trainer there. And it actually looked like the wrestlers all look like not necessarily ready for prime time, but the way it's shot and edited, it looks very professional. It looks very watchable.
Al Snow, however, is in phenomenal condition. He's in the Marty Jannetty. He's in the Marty Jannetty.
Oh,
Dark
yeah, that's
Side
right.
Of the Ring, and he's just like, I'm like, that's Head. That's Al.
Yeah.
He looks great. He looks great. Marty Jannetty, not so much though.
Only one of them is on testosterone replacement therapy. So you put it together, which one?
Yeah.
So you mentioned, of course, SiriusXM, and like, I remember I worked there now almost a decade ago. It's kind of crazy. And it's like, you never know when you walk in there who you're going to see. Like one day, Jose would just pull me in like, hey, do you want to meet Slash? Oh, sure. Or actually, literally on my first day, I'm in Jose's office because he's like training me and giving me the ropes. And Justin Bieber comes in to shake our hand. And I'm like, what is going on? This is ridiculous. So I wanted to ask you, what were some interactions that you've had with pro wrestlers or metal musicians that stand out in your head?
Nothing is going to top Hulk Hogan. I think he was on O&A or Opie and Jimmy. I don't know what it was. Shout outs to E-Rock, because E-Rock gave me the heads up. Yo, Hogan's going to be here. And I'm like, introduced me, shook his hand and like gripped that fucker. And he was like, you're breaking my hand, brother.
Well, in wrestling, it's kind of a thing to do a soft handshake. I've always been told is you don't want to bust their working hand.
I got really excited, and meeting Hogan was sick. I got Scott Hall on my left and DDP on my right on one time. Crazy. Bubba Ray and Jericho, same thing. Crazy. Jake's doing all right. Jake the Snake, right?
Yeah.
One time
sober now.
I peed in the urinal next to Jake the Snake, and Jake was wearing socks in the bathroom at the urinal. And I'm like, oh, Jake. This was many
no
years
shoes.
Ago. No shoes. Jake was walking around the building with his socks on and went in to have himself a leak at the urinal, which is always sopping wet with piss on the floor because no one ever gets it in the urinal. And he was just standing there in socks. And I'm like, oh, Jake. Oh, no. Jake. But I'm glad he's doing better now. But yeah, weird. Like you said, just weird shit would happen. I know MJF was just up there, but I'm rarely in the studios anymore. God, I'm trying to think of who else has been up there. Shawn Michaels' publicist stiffed me the first time, but the second time he was up there, I made sure to get my pick. That was all right. I don't blame Shawn Michaels. It's those goddamn publicists. Oh my God, my most embarrassing, the Bellas with hover hands. Oh, I had to take that picture off because everyone was like, nice hover hands, poser. So embarrassing. But that's Charlotte Flair. Met Charlotte Flair once. Everybody was
just basically just in the press area, and you could just say hello to them and take a quick photo.
Or I would be following La Greca on Busted Open, or I'd follow whatever, and I'd see like, oh, our guest today, and I'm like, oh shit, and then I'd hit him up and be like, yo, what time is the interview end? 12. So with like 12:03, I'd be like, stalking in the lobby or whatever. But yeah, that's the thing. Every interaction at Sirius is like, like Brad Pitt says in Fight Club, it's like a single serving like thing. You just like,
single serving friend.
Yeah, and that's what every you meet Hulk Hogan. Oh, cool, thank you. Yeah, you mean NWO for life. Yeah, Diamond Cutter. Yeah, and like everything is boom, 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 boom. Jose kind of has that energy where Justin Bieber will walk into his office and hang out there for 5 minutes. But most of these times it's like, hey, quick pick, cool, big fan, nice to meet you. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I want to be clear. He didn't hang out at all. He was like, hey, nice office. All right, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for all your help.
And it's
like, well, we didn't help you.
That's all of these occurrences. I remember at the airport, 4 a.m., Dean Ambrose walks by me and I'm like, oh, is that Dean? So 4 a.m. and I'm like, bad move, but I couldn't help myself. So I sped walked ahead of him, sharp 180, and waited for him. And I'm like, he knows. And I'm like, hey, Dean, big fan. And he looks up at me and he's like, he's got shit in his beard. And I'm like, yo, man, big fan. Can I quick pick? And he looks at me, he gives me the Oculus scan. He's like, all right, you're cool. And I went, bop, bop, bop. And I was like, yo, thank you. And you got to know how to package and deliver and execute quickly within a span of 15 seconds.
Have the camera app open.
Yes.
I make sure it's on the right side for the selfie side.
Yeah.
Don't want to waste their time.
No. You don't want to be.
Who are some metal musicians you worked with though? Because like with the wrestling guys, it's just a handshake. But the metal guys, you're actually doing breaks with some of them, right? Like who ended up being way cooler than you thought? Wow, this person is real.
I mean, James Hetfield from Metallica is the coolest motherfucker on earth, and
it doesn't get better than that.
That was the best. That was the best 15 minutes of my entire life, and I can't even think of anything cooler. Like that was the pinnacle for life. I mean, unless The Rock wants to hit me up for 15 minutes or whatever, that was it. Like it was Hetfield was the coolest ever. But most of these dudes, Vincent Bennett, the Acacia Strain, one of the coolest, nicest guys ever. My man Herman from Johnny Booth, one of the coolest, nicest guys ever. When it gets to the point of we're not just talking music, we're not just on the phone shooting promos and delivering how we're gonna, get this world premiere out or whatever. When we just go out for margaritas and we eat Colombian steaks and we're just chilling, smoking joints and hanging out, that's when it's like, oh, cool. This isn't just like a band thing. This is like actual friends being cool and just having fun. And I love that kind of shit. But everybody, I really haven't had any bad in 16 years, lucky enough, haven't had any bad experiences with anybody while I've been interviewing them. But Trevor Sternad, one of the greatest dudes ever. Rest in peace. I've met a ton of amazing people through doing all of this, and that's what I love is trying to find out who's a mark and who's a wrestling fan. I just talked when Cruelty from Japan was just here. I interviewed him, and I'm like, please tell me somebody in this band is a Godzilla fan, because I love Godzilla and I can't wait to go to Japan. And that might be the stupidest question ever to ask, but he was like, yeah, we're actually pretty big Godzilla fans. And I'm like, yeah. So like just being able to talk to people. I mean, this dude came from across the world, and I got to hang out with him and talk to him for 10 minutes at Amityville Music Hall in Long Island. Just like doing that stuff is always the coolest. But I mean, everybody's always been cool. In the beginning, I would be super nervous to talk to people, but now I'm like, no, like they're coming to me, and I'm putting them on. Like it's the whole vibe is kind of so now it's not like interviewing. Now it's just like I tell them all before I do an interview, I'm like, this don't take any of this like serious. Like just I'm like, we're just going to shoot the shit. Like if we fuck up, like who cares? Yeah, like this doesn't matter as much as everyone kind of wants to like, oh, this is going to be really important. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be that. It's like, no, I'm like, just mutter and stumble your way through. It doesn't fucking matter. We're just having fun. And that kind of like eases people. So I try to like, even with Hetfield, when he came on, man, like I was just talking to shit with him for like 2 minutes. How you doing? All right. How's everything go? Whatever. This is my setup. This is how I'm going to do this. Just so you know, give him an idea, you know. And he was super cool about everything. And there's no one cooler. There's no one cooler. Hetfield and Hogan. I mean, that's my tops. Yeah, that's my tops at this company. I mean, Dying Fetus almost got me fired twice in the same day because their name was up on the screen, the big screen. That was a great time. Grave Worm did a cover of Bon Jovi's Runaway, and Bon Jovi's people emailed us angrily at 8:00 in the morning. Who is this band making fun of Bon Jovi? And we're like, what are you talking about? This is a cover song. They're actually paying tribute to Bon Jovi, and it is one of my favorite cover songs of all time. Check out Grave Worm Runaway. It is black metal. It is incredible.
I'm absolutely gonna check that
out.
It
is so good. Shout outs to Scotty Krynock, the host of the Corridor Covers, who put me onto that, because I was like, why are we being angrily emailed at 8 a.m. by Bon Jovi's people about this song that I didn't know about? So the first thing I did was go listen to the song, and I was like, this is great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. And of course, you have your own podcast. If you like yourself some horror, some thrillers, some action, it's called In Madness with our friend Rodney. Tell us a little bit about it. Tell the Squared Circle Pit about it.
Yeah, shout outs to first off, shout outs to Squared Circle Pit. Yeah, I loved your interview with Brody King. Shout outs to God's Hate.
Oh, nice. Yes.
I'm a mark for wrestling. I'm a mark for metal. But yeah, we have In Madness Pod. It's myself, Vertebrae 33. We were going to start as horror, but we've kind of been already, we're like 15, 16 episodes in, and you like branch off, because some things you might consider horror, somebody else might not consider horror. It's the same with metal. It's like, oh, this is it. It's like, oh, no, it's not. This is this. So immediately people will be like, oh, so because we did the Batman. But if people are like, oh, you're branching off from horror. And it's like, no, because if you watch the Batman, it is a horror movie. For like the whole layout of it is horror influence. So we're building this world where like a lot of things can fit into it. But it's darker kind of, you know, movies and imagery and shit like that. Art, movies. We recently had a guest on, this toy photographer. He takes pictures of horror toys.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, me and Vertebrae are huge toy collectors. So it's just a lot of nerd shit. And we're building. We're about to have our year anniversary in December. On the day after Christmas is going to be our year anniversary. But for years, everyone's like, do a podcast. And I'm like, yeah, great. More work. No, thanks. I'm okay. So, because I was doing my Hails from the Crypt thing, where I was doing photography and the interviews, and I was filming the interviews and putting up the photography and and it was so much work. I'd forget to hit record on the mic, or I'd forget to hit record on the camera, or I'd forget, like the focus would be bad, and I'd lose the whole interview. And I'm just like, I need a team for this. This is entirely too much. So I stuck to just recently, just doing audio interviews. And I was like, I'm not doing a podcast. There's a million podcasts. And like, I don't listen to that many. I just started recently listening to podcasts. There's a King of the Hill podcast, and I love King of the Hill. And not many people put respect on Hank Hill's name. So I was like, and they're from Australia. So it's like this. So I followed they do a Simpsons podcast called Four Finger Discount. And I've been following them on Facebook for years because everything they post is frigging hilarious. And I
didn't know that was a podcast. Yeah,
yes.
I just follow this.
Four Finger Discount. It's a podcast. So they started a King of the Hill podcast. So recently I've been listening to them. My man Anthony Capozzi, the singer of the band Lost Becomes, recently put me on to this dude who does a podcast about every Roadrunner Records album and has dudes on from Roadrunner talking about the album. And I've been obsessed again with Fear Factory Obsolete. So my man sent me, he was like, here's the Obsolete podcast because it's on Roadrunner Records. So this kid does, and like I grew up listening to Roadrunner. So like I need to dive deeper into this, but I recently started listening to that. So King of the Hill, heavy metal, and wrestling metal. That's what I've been dipping my toes into the podcast world. But I was like, I grew up doing talk radio, so I didn't want to do any more talk radio. I was done with it. But then our buddy Rodney was like, hey, let's jump on Instagram Live and watch Halloween and just talk about my new Halloween poster I made. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. I'm going to drop on Instagram Live, have a couple drinks, smoke a little, watch Halloween, just talk shit. And then at the end of the Instagram Live, we were going to do an hour. And we did 2.5 hours, just like laughing our asses off. And immediately after, he's like, I want to start a podcast with you. And I was like, that was always a better pitch than everyone saying, just start a podcast. Just start a podcast. Yeah. So I was like, you're willing to bear 50% of this whatever burden this might be, because this is going to be a big chunk of our lives is going to now get dedicated to this. So he's like, yeah. So we split our responsibilities down the middle and we just started going and you know, figuring things out and changing things. Because like for 15 episodes in, we're like, now we do these little in-between episodes. So not every episode's about movies. Sometimes we could just talk about, you know, the new Godzilla movie coming out, if the new Japanese Godzilla movie, or like the, you know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles old episodes being bought by Nickelodeon, and now they're going to be available on like, you know, YouTube or whatever. So we could dive into that stuff, and it doesn't have to be like, I mean, when we did the Batman was a 2.5 hour movie. The podcast was 3 hours or something long, and everyone was like, oof, that's a big chunk to swallow. So lately we've been like trying to break up movies, and we'll do part 1 and we'll do part 2. But some people, they want to hear the whole thing in one clip, but it's like, just wait a week. We put it out the week after. So we're still figuring it out, and it's still in its infancy. You just taught me how to use the headphone technique. I mean, I'm learning. It's like with everything else, I'm keeping my ears and my eyes open, and I'm willing to learn, but it is fun. It's a lot of fun. Shout outs to In Madness. Shout outs to Vertebrae 33 at In Madness Pod on all of the socials.
Boom.
Yeah.
Sean, thank you so much for hanging out with me and shooting the shit talking about pro wrestling. This has been very fun. And now it's time to exit the pit.
Yes. Thank you. Much love.